Hello, and welcome to the Metamodern Hacker Collective meeting on AI, and this is session one. Will be a session two, and so what we're going to do here is this isn't going to be theoretical so much. It's going to be much more based on projects that people are doing and demos and needs offer rounds. In the past, we've had more people here, so we had to keep it kind of short since we're doing two sessions. Then there might actually be a little more time per person here. I'm not quite sure what we're doing. See if we can get what we can get done in the next 55 minutes. But this is driving from a lot of this is coming from well, obviously the recent Cambrian explosion of generative AI and related programs and applications, and people testing what it is capable of. And I mean, there'll be a time in the coming years people will be looking back on now and saying, remember when AI could only generate still frames and text, and it's not real time reading your facial features and responding to that, so things are getting scary. And there was a Hansi article, and well, there was a Jim's article as well, which I haven't read yet. But the Hansi article that Daniel Gertz asked me to distribute, make sure everybody in the collective got a copy and could read if they could, and have a meeting or series of meetings about this, with the idea that essentially we're gonna be red pilling ourselves here to AI. Whereas there's different approaches. Some people are saying, okay, we want to stop this before it destroys the world. It's kind of the Forrest Landry approach. And I get that. Okay, so that's one thing. I'm not exactly as alarmed as he is about this, but I think that, yeah, definitely there's concerns, for every time that we create new technologies, we lose a little bit of our humanity. But we do need to be concerned about this. It's not actually going to go away if we do that. It's a little bit like the Russians back in 1900 wanting to have a pact for freezing the arms exactly where they are, because they knew they couldn't keep up with the Western Europeans. So they wanted to float that, like, hey, well, let's just not do any technology development in arms. That'll be great. Okay, so that's not going to happen. But what the Hansi article seems to be saying, a few things, actually, it's pretty long, but one of the main things is that we're going to just soberly understand what's going on, and if we can maintain human collective intelligence, we can actually keep we can maintain our upper hand on this, or be in right relation with it. In some ways it's going to be a lot smarter than us, and it's going to keep getting smarter, but there are certain ways in which it is not. And if we maintain our intelligence at the individual and collective level, and then we can maintain our well-being, our political and economic institutions in such a way that we can prevent AI from destroying us. So there's probably other ways in which does anybody else have another summary that we can offer of this Hansi article, just before we get going, just so we have that frame? Are you guys good with that? Do you have anything to add, Lee?
Well, only that the grammatical structure is apparently, wrong, according to the article, that it needs to be trained on a new type of grammar that's maybe more humane, is how I understood that.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, but I think what they're saying is that there is a core grammar that is baked into our humanity as complex adaptive systems, that the AI system is not actually going to be able to surpass us in, and that if we structure our communication and our social institutions based on that. We're mindful of how the ways in which we are inherently more intelligent, and anchor ourselves into that. Then we can avoid AI, always getting the upper hand on us. I'm not quite sure, actually. There's a lot going on in the article, but anyway, so what we wanted to really talk about here, rather than getting so much into the philosophical side of things, which we could do in future events, but that wouldn't be what this particular group is for. I mean, with the Metamodern think tank, we could actually create more working groups. We could run that idea by Daniel and Emil. But we're gonna talk about what everybody's working on and how it relates to metamodernism, and how it somehow relates to, okay, so we're not just developing this technology because it's like what's I don't know if you guys heard the recent podcast on the integral stage with Soryu Foral. He's the founder of the Monastic Academy. So he's pretty much saying that people who are creating these AI tools and wanting to make them, smarter and smarter, are almost like a suicide pact. So I kind of actually sort of agree with him, and that's why I'm thinking, okay, so actually we do want this AI development, but we want to be in right relationship with it, so that there are certain aspects of our collective intelligence in which we are going to maintain superior intelligence. So that is what that's being mindful of that. Those sort of projects are what we're going to be talking about here. Okay, and so if anybody has any, and also, we could probably open it up as well to other projects that aren't really all that AI related. This is just very salient in the technology space in recent months. And so who would like to go first to talk about what you've been working on, and maybe demo something, and also ask for, open it up to needs and offers and the possibility of partnerships. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, I can go. What the hell? Let's see here. Where's my program? I'm going to briefly talk about the thing I'm actually hands-on working on, and then talk also briefly about a much more interesting project that hasn't yet actually come into being, but there's a number of people in a loosely coupled network talking about it. Do the screen share here. Host is disabled, participant screen sharing.
Oh, just a sec here. You are co-host, Jim.
All right. Let's see here. There we go. Share. All right. This is my screen. This is a screen share of my script helper application, which is a intricate dance between a user interface and GPTs, and it can do either GPT 3.5 or GPT 4. Probably next week I'm going to add in the ability to do Bard and Claude also. And the idea is that how do you leverage a relatively small amount, but strategic and creative at times, inputs from an author to massively accelerate the process of writing a movie screenplay. I'm collaborating with a semi-pro screenwriter who's written a number of scripts, actually had one produced, and so he provides some real-world perspective on it. And it does actually work. The essay I put in the chat box, not only does it go in considerable detail on the prompt structurings and the back and forth, but at the end, there's a full-length script, which I wrote in 3 hours using the program. And my professional scriptwriter buddy says, well, it ain't brilliant, but it ain't terrible either. And most importantly, he said at least the process he's aware of is that the first draft is the hard part. It could take him 2 months to 9 months to write a first draft of a screenplay. And then that's when the work really starts to turn it into a commercially viable product. And his take was, that's not a terrible starting first draft, and to do it in 3 hours is pretty amazing. And that's just the version 001 of the program. And so, it does a number of things. You start off with just a hint on what the movie is, and then it writes a long version, which I call the movie text. And then you have it write longer versions by sending it notes. Like you say, let's see, please add 3 romantic interludes of increasingly passionate nature. And this is the cool thing about GPT. You just talk about it in plain old language and you apply the note. When it does is it sends the original movie text, which it wrote, and then takes the note and then rewrites the movie text. It does GPT-4 does a really good job. GPT 3.5 is, it's somewhat good, okay. But for prototyping purposes, 3.5 is 6 times faster. So that's the main reason I use it for prototyping. But for final production, you'd always use GPT-4. And then it will take the movie after you've done the as many notes as you want. That you can then have it automatically make scenes out of it, and on and on and on. Anyway, so I have to say, I just started it out as a learning tool to learn more about how to do GPT programming and what does it really do. But it has opened my eyes up a whole lot to the idea that, one, LLMs at this stage aren't particularly scary, that they're just yet another useful technology, and that anyone who's working with words in particular should quickly learn how they should put LLMs in their workflows. This is a very nice upregulation of our capacity, and I'm sure there'll be some misuses of it. Particularly the sea of sludge that will be coming, as you already see it on your Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds. The amount of shit that's coming through that's clearly LLM generated. Let me show you here how this thing makes scenes. This will probably take a while. Actually, let me make it a small number so it doesn't take so long. I'll have it divided up into 10 scenes of 30 tokens each. And this, again, quite remarkable. You just take this fairly long form movie text and press that button, and it will send it off and make 10 scenes out of it of 40 tokens each, approximately, in the description. And it'll take probably 45 seconds, something like that, before it'll come back, and then you can continue from there. But so this is a narrowly focused human productivity increasing tool that really does seem like it shows that there's potential. But the flip side of it, what about the changes in our ecosystem that come from the sea of sludge? And what do we do about that? This is where this loose coalition of people are talking rapidly about building info agents for us, so that we no longer are on Twitter raw, or on Facebook raw, or in my mind, probably even on email raw. And instead, we have an info agent that interfaces to all these things, uses these tools to do. See, there, a thing just popped up. It made 10 scenes. Let's go over to the scenes section. Gives you a little description of each scene. And then you can say, let's make a longer text out of the scene. Now GPT will turn that short description into like a page long description. And again, you can send it notes to enhance it, etc. So I'm thinking that we're in an arms race that we aren't seeing yet, where LLMs make it easier to produce manipulative shit, but also make it easier to make defensive info agents. And the analogy I'm using is spam filters. You see here, it went from this little 2-sentence description of the scene to a 4-paragraph description of the scene. You can send it a note, make it more sexually explicit, and it will completely rewrite it. And so, like spam filters, spam almost killed email about 1996. And there was a breakthrough in natural language programming that allowed the spam filters to stay ahead of spam thereafter. And so my supposition is that the sea of sludge that these LLMs will generate, the reaction will be smart info agents, which will help us deal with it. And in fact, if we do a good job with these info agents, okay, so I finished rewriting it. Let's see if it made it more explicit, sexually explicit. Oh yeah, their tongues intertwine in ecstasy. As their bodies entwine, they are lost in order of intense pleasure. Yeah, so it actually did add some sexual explicitness to the write-up. And then if you want to, you could have it actually write the scene in screenwriter format. Wait a minute. Oh well, little bug. Anyway, neither here nor there. But anyway, this info agent ecosystem, we could actually end up in a better place than we are today, where we were overwhelmed with attention hijacking shit anyway. And if the info agent can massively reduce the amount of crap that comes into our inbox and does a way better job of pre-summarizing and understanding what we're interested in, I think there's a really interesting opportunity. As I say, there's a community of, I don't know, at least 10 people I know thinking hard about this problem. And it just seems like such a natural thing as a next step in the evolution of the ecosystem. And the technologies will actually make the core technologies of LLMs, but also the closely related technologies of latent semantic space embeddings will make it a lot easier to do than it would have been able to do a good info agent prior to that.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Seems pretty cool. All right. And not sure if anyone wants to ask any questions before going to the next round. Any questions for Jim?
Jim, where are you going to render the final product of this? Or how is it going to be available to users?
But which one, the info agent or the script writer?
Oh, I'm sorry, the script writing.
It's funny. I think I'm going to do it as if I went to do it as a product, which I'm not sure. So far, I've just done this as a learning exercise. But if I did do it as a product, I would deliver it as a PC software, as contrary as that is. The reason being is that it's a intricate workflow. As you saw some of the screens. It's got lots more screens. And this is not something you could easily do on the web, and you couldn't do at all in a mobile interface. So it's the class of thing like Photoshop that needs to be done actually as PC software.
And one just quick follow-up: are you worried at all about the Writers Guild? In light of the recent
might be a little warm stuff.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Sue me? No. My take, I've actually written a little bit on this publicly, is that I think the Writers Guild is going to lose. The benefit is just so obvious that there's no way the Hollywood's going to bend the knee and say, no, you can't use this stuff. Because even I probably have less than 40 hours in this program so far. And just me hacking around, produce something that obviously would be beneficial to a script writing team already. The idea that a major industry would forbid that level of useful automation, I think, is ludicrous. So my advice to the screenwriters: get over it, dudes. You're just gonna have to deal with it and learn it.
Yeah, get over it and learn how to be a prompt engineer, plus do your job, which will be more powerful than any one person just being a writer or one person being a prompt engineer. Combine those two into a new job classification.
Yeah, and I think that's the lesson for most kinds of white collar symbolic manipulation in particular. The other thing, I now do much of my coding with GPT helping me. Right, it's a great coding helper, and so programming is rapidly going to morph into being more conceptual, design oriented, and less worrying about getting the syntax right. GPT will do that for you most of the time. Now, you still need to know, because it's not perfect, you still need to know enough to be able to debug when it fucks up, but you can improve your productivity by a factor of 3 or 4 easily. And so most of the symbolic manipulator jobs are going to now morph into a higher level conceptual and more creative functionality, and the drudge work aspects will become automated by these quite powerful token manipulators that we call LLMs.
All right. Not sure if there's additional questions for Jim or if we want to move to the next round here. Who would like to go next then?
I'm happy to step up since we are kind
Did
of
you
running out of
need
time.
to present anything?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing a screen share if that's
Just a
okay.
second here. You are co-host.
Okay, great. Let's see. All right, so my adaptation of AI is this game that I'd almost given up on. And then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 months ago, when ChatGPT-4 was being talked about wildly, I spent the next 3 or 4 days on there. I was late to log on, but once I did, I realized, oh my God, this is the thing that's going to change everything. And it's going to allow me to finish this game, which was just incomprehensibly large and complex and couldn't be finished. So what I have here is a self-organizing game-based learning method whereby, students create their own questions in a game that takes them through 20 to 25 rounds, covering 20 sections of history, 7 areas of knowledge, and 6 levels of learning for a world history course. But the basic framework can be used for any course at any school. And the vision now, because of AI, would be that students create their own series of games and sub-games or games within these games, such that they could complete all of the education they need for high school to graduate and then move on. And it started out very similar to the game of Risk. The story of this is that my students weren't having it. I had when I first started high school teaching, they were not interested at all in my class. And I couldn't imagine myself covering, the span of 10,000 years of recorded human history as like this content spoon feeder. So the idea came up, and it was controversial at the time, this is early 1990s, that they would create this game, continue building upon it until it was finished. Well, it ran for 7 years. I ended up doing a graduate thesis paper on this, which led me into chaos theory and self-organizing systems and how all that works and why it works so well, which is that, similar to Conway's Game of Life, 4 lines of code, it iterates wildly into these amazing patterns. And then over time, they kind of form this fascinating system where they learn. So what I did in this latest version here is that every time someone, and this was a podcast I did recently about it, as they scroll through, they'll find where they can go to prompt base. And this whole thing launches. Initially, I thought it was going to be 7 or 8 prompts, 3 prompts. And I just got approved for the final one this morning. It turns out it had been rejected initially. 3 prompts will launch the whole game. Each, like this one here, will produce kind of the set of rules. There's 2 more. I'll just demonstrate one so you can see it in real time. So this one here produces a table. And let's reboot that if I can. I'll just open up a new window. We'll run it through GPT-4. And what this one does is, initially there were, there's 200 member nations in the United Nations. Originally in the game, they would take over a property or a territory on the world map. And the value of that nation would be determined by per capita income, which is grossly outdated and also very politically incorrect if you think about it in modern terms. So what I did instead is I added 11 more criterion. per capita income, land mass, population, access to natural resources, proximity to other nations, access to warm water ports, literacy rate, infrastructure, and GPT-4 immediately assigned a 1 through 10 value to each country. Then what it does is it averages that out, and at the end you get a number, and that number is the number of questions a student has to answer correctly to have that territory on a map. So there's a lot of calculating going on, a lot of strategy, and teachers are allowed to, or students would be allowed to manipulate the prompt to develop different kinds of questions in different categories. So then you're teaching students how to also be prompt engineers. They can change the rules as they see fit. I mean, it did it just very quickly. It of course only had room for 3 countries, but of course, if you hit, where's the continue button on here? Oh, it says that it's done, but it's not. So I'm going to have to tweak that. But eventually the one that I ran will go through all 200 member nations. So we'll kind of, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Other than that, I am also doing a, let's see if I can get this. So as part of this, I'm going to be teaching teachers how to use ChatGPT in the classroom. I think, just to kind of summarize my position on this, I'm calling it, the age of imagination instead of just AI, because of natural language programming. I believe that people such as myself, who are not trained as programmers, but who might have a liberal arts background, we're talking about members of the creative class, knowledge workers in general, that this is their time. They just don't realize it. There is no kind of public relations campaign about this shift that's happening. And people are intimidated by this the same way they're intimidated by previous technologies, but they're not understanding that natural language programming means the only limitation here is their imagination. And once they're told about the basic framework, the sky's the limit. I'm even noticing that when you look on job boards, that jobs have not changed as radically as they should have by now. I'm not seeing new job titles and new job descriptions. For example, there should be a position like for a hyper generalist or a concept architect, someone who merges together ideas to form new prompts to produce new products, or to run, there should be an agent GPT or auto GPT specialist within companies. So the idea would be that a class, the type of class that I'm offering, or a game, would teach students also not only about the game and about learning all the content of a history course, for example, but teaching them how to be prepared for these new roles that are not even being, like I said, advertised or talked about. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'll take any questions. Yeah, Sam.
Just real quick, I'm just curious, what is the gameplay like? Like, what do you do?
Yeah,
You have to answer social studies questions, but
right.
is there a motive? Are there game steps? Is there a how do you win? All that.
Right. Well, there's multiple categories for winning, but the simplest is, imagine students sitting in kind of like this horseshoe configuration facing a giant map that takes up an entire wall. They're dealt out 8 or 9 countries per student, times 30 students in a classroom. That gives you the number of countries in the world presently. They're allowed to either maintain that country, by answering a series of questions equal to the value of that country, or they can attack adjacent country. You're allowed, again, similar to the game of Risk, 1 attack or 1 move at a time, and then you move on to the next person. And this goes on for 25 rounds through the different phases of history, and the questions align with whatever section of the history book you're reading at the time. So by the end of this, you have either the greatest diplomat, someone who's created a peaceful situation on Earth. I forgot to mention also in phase 5, there's a new thing I built called Solving the Meta Crisis. And
Oh, but actually that was the one that we were working on together. So we'll get to that. Hopefully.
yeah, and so Brandon and one other person were working on this together. But the idea there is, I had GPT-4 use Conway's 4 lines of code, the game of life, to create a system that puts the Earth back into balance. And GPT-4 just called it Earth balance. And it's more like this matrix. So they go out into the future in round 5, and whoever comes up with the best system to solve the meta crisis wins.
Bernard?
First of all, thanks for the quick demo. I have been very interested in generating games on the fly, and this was a nice example. And I wondered, how do you deal with, or have you thought about, if in the generated game something is simply not correct? For example, in the table you just had the numbers, somehow they are taken from what the LLM thinks is a good thing, but is not. Have you thought about it? How to deal with it?
Yeah, I have thought about that. And I think the idea there is that we're going to have to get very good at distinguishing what's a hallucination, with GPT-4, and what is not, what's factual, what's not. The same way as we did with Google, where people didn't realize that what they might be receiving is something non-factual. So students will be encouraged to question that, and perhaps they could set up a rule system where they're allowed a challenge, similar to like in the NBA, where you're allowed a certain number of challenges that the referee makes. And if it turns out you're correct, that person's move is taken back. But those numbers need to be researched.
Well, let me address this real quick, because I think that Rick Rapetti and some people he's working with they have a way of addressing this, where in fact at the Consilience conference from 2 months ago that Jim and I were presenters at, and there were 40 total people presenting somehow. Rick Rapetti was talking about a blockchain-based system that would have like juries of people who would actually research this sort of thing and have voting on, what is authoritative information, that then in turn the there would be a way of keeping the AI in check. There's quite a bit to it. He had a whole presentation on that. And I'm not sure if he uploaded it, to where you can access it for free. I uploaded my own presentation for free. One way or another, you can pay $30 at the UTalk Circle and watch all the videos there. I mean, suppose you could go to YouTube and search for Rick Rapetti and see if he uploaded his own video there, I'm sure he's talking about it somewhere for free somehow.
I think the easiest answer also is to use just basic collective intelligence. I've noticed a lot of these startups now, especially in the AI space, are opening up Discords, and then the community moves in to solve the problem because they want to use the technology or the game or the product so much. They're willing to work on solving that problem. So I'm putting it out to my Discord community, and hopefully, because I'm only one person with one brain, I'd rather use like 10,000 brains and put it on this, and I think we'll come up with a solution. I don't have one yet.
All right. I want to make sure, let's see if we can get enough time for everybody here, and just for a few minutes, let me see if we can present on the idea that we were talking about, you and I, Lee. So I've been working on a meta curriculum for the meta crisis. So essentially like courses to understand what is the meta crisis and what can you do about it, which I'm thinking we would target people in positions of power, influence, and leadership. I'm not exactly sure how to get them to want to sign on to our courses, everyone from elected officials to bureaucrats to business leaders, etc. But at least we're looking at the modules of what this would be, and how to convey these ideas to people who aren't yet familiar with all the complex jargon so that they can understand, okay, in their problem space that they think they have, there are some adjacencies and some relations that they also need to consider in different categories. And then they can start to understand a deeper connection and how we would help them. This would be connected to like a consultancy where we would help them formulate roadmaps and project plans for, trying to live more sustainably, protect the biosphere, strengthen communities, improve people's well-beings, and try to like reform our institutions or replace our outdated institutions, in some cases. So I don't know if that would be a tough sell, but it's worth it. This is something we've been having a series of discussions about that. And one element is what are the modules? Okay, so, and one of the modules is this gamification, or like, okay, we're embracing game theory it's game B based. So in addition to teaching them, where they're going to have go through games on how to learn how multipolar traps work and other things like that, other negative impacts. So I think that's so Lee, you and I are working on that, and so you have some ideas on that's another thing that essentially using AI to help to build this game or other related games that not all of which we've actually worked on yet. But so that is I suppose maybe you can speak to that just for a minute or two here.
Well, the only thing I would add to it is just that I'd alluded to this public relations campaign that we're going to need to go on, because even just the term meta crisis alone, you've already lost 70% of the general public.
Well, that's another thing. I get that the language.
Right.
How do you convey that?
Right. And so the idea of gamifying it, I think, is interesting. And I think you have a whole generation, Gen Z, and then beyond that, who they learn through gaming. And so they're going to want to, I would only add that it's even more exciting when they create their own environment, their own gamification tools to get through this. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a 7-year experiment, and I found out that there was no way to quantify the degree of engagement and participation and how much improved. It was one of those things where you see it, it's a phenomenon, that it works, the same way we know that decentralization and blockchain garners greater participation. So I would just try to tap into some of those things to get more people working on this.
Okay, I'm putting the course outline into the chat here, and so you can see that we're framing it. Okay, so part 3 is where we are using game theory and complexity thinking to understand the problem space and the potential solution space. And some of this is going to involve interactive games that leverage generative AI for understanding things such as rules for rulers, multipolar traps, Moloch, principal agent problem, attractors, trying to find a third attractor. And so with this consultancy that we have in mind, we would study the situation and the problem space for our clients, and we would try to connect these ideas, these in game B theory to what they're doing there, and try to open their mind and their context of the people who we're working with, the participating organizations, to help formulate a project plans and roadmaps that not only address their problems that they had previously already identified, but also maximize and optimize for other contextual factors that they might not have been factoring in previously, such as, again, living more sustainably, protecting the environment, strengthening communities, improving people's well-being, etc. So what do you guys think of that? All right. Well, I'm not sure if there are any questions or comments from anybody. It's like we got another 15 minutes. So I'm not sure if any questions are coming up, but since there's 3 more people, we got 15 more minutes. Do you, any of the three of you guys who haven't spoken yet would like to present on anything? Yes, Sam. Would you like me to make you presenter, Sam?
No, it's okay. I
Yeah.
don't think I need to. Yeah, so you guys probably have heard me talk a little bit about 4B, and I'll give a quick update, but let me talk briefly about how we're looking at using AI. One is just as a glorified, Google search to find similar proposals, similar challenges, to sort of help people not make redundant challenges and proposals and things. But there's another kind of interesting idea that I've been looking at, which has to do with the fact that in industry, almost any industry, if you do things sustainably, you can't compete, right? So there's this concept that unless everybody does it, nobody can do it, right? Unless everybody makes the change to using recycled or whatever, blah, 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 nobody can do it. So using AI, or we could do it without AI, I suppose, as well, but to generate some kind of a table that shows all the commercial commodities and products and look at the ways that these industries would need to change to become sustainable. And then look at the cost that increase that would result, not only for that product, but all downstream products. So to start to model and project what sustainability would actually cost. Find low-hanging fruit where specific changes in industries could happen sort of more easily than others. Start to tweak the algorithm. And the tweaking factor is governance that imposes a rule, making sure the industry players understand that this is going to affect everybody, but we've modeled that it won't shut your industry down because you're all going to be affected by the same rule. So you're going to have to make these changes to be sustainable. And, so here's the law, here's the new law, the new rules. Of course, it would have to be worldwide. So, it's a little pie in the sky, but it's kind of like something that I think would be fun to work on, even though there's no teeth. But it's clear to understand that, it's clear to me, like when you talk about the third attractor, people are confused about it. It's very clear in my mind what Schmuckenberger is talking about. He's talking about a worldwide governance platform. And so that's what I'm building, and I'm doing my best to build that. And if anybody wants to brainstorm on how to make the thing that I've planned so far better, please just hit me up. I'm happy to go through it. We're happy to get your input to hear how this could be a better product. Obviously, it'll have no teeth in the beginning, but it'll be a way for people to start to develop the familiarity and comfort and trust with a system that could coordinate at the level of billions. So, and I'd be happy to, get anybody's input. So, and it's clear to me that without that sort of governance, without a governance system that, our governance models have very low trust. People, they have no authority or very little authority, only the authority of the, monopoly on violence, because in some cases, because people don't trust them. But if it was a system that was, that people really understood was coming from the will of the people, and that things were well considered, and everybody could participate, and you could see the evolution of ideas and see the input of famous people and knowledgeable people on the process, and the delegate to people that you trust and all of that stuff. I think there could be an authority that develops, that people start to trust that this thing could actually work. Sure, we could just hand it over to AI at some point, but why don't we try human intelligence first? Why don't we try a platform that allows real collective intelligence? And that's what it's intending to be. And if it, again, I said, if anybody can think of a better way to do this than the one I've been working on, please hit me up. If this thing, if I'm barking up the wrong tree, I'll drop it in a second, though I've been working on it for 2 years, and I'll start working on the next one because I've got kids. So, and I don't want to see them inherit these problems that we've kicked the can down the road. So anyway,
I
that's
think it's actually great that you're doing that, where you are acknowledging that we need collective human intelligence that we can then embrace AI to some extent to get there. And so you're not saying essentially like we're going to build a super AI that will do global governance for us, which is actually, I think that was what So Are You For All was railing against in that video of the integral stage that he was on, that where there were some people actually doing that development at the monastic academy. And he's like, oh, these are great people, but they're a suicide cult, So I agree that we don't want AI systems to do global governance for us. We need to do that in our human collective intelligence.
I totally, and just to pipe in a little bit is that we're building a liquid democracy platform, and coupled with paired up with a group in Sweden, Flowback. I would love to see Jim get in touch with them. I read Jim's article on liquid democracy, and I think they have an interesting conversation. But so we're working with them. But oh, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah, liquid democracy, as I see it, is the infrastructure, the foundation, and on top of where you can manually choose who you delegate to based on topics or proposal based, or just hand it all over if you want. But on top of that, there's opportunity for many delegation algorithms that people are developing, trust networks, an AI assistant that knows your preferences and can find proposals that you like and automatically vote for you and show you what it's done if you want very easily. Or, even just looking up people's resumes, or, there's a lot of, prediction markets, where people, the system generates generate a category of predictions, and people predict the response, and those who get closer to the reality of what happens in the future get like points in that arena. Like, say we're making predictions about what the quantitative easing will do on the US dollar or whatever, and people place predictions, and people who get the closest to it get like points. And so then you can start to delegate to people who tend to have better predictive ability in the future. So there's a lot of algorithms that people are working on, but in my mind, they all have to sit on a base layer of liquid democracy, where every member is a delegate. It's not representation. You don't expect anybody to represent you. You expect them to do what they're good at, and you delegate to their expertise. So it's delegation, not representation. And I think that's the foundation that all of these other algorithms and AI and everything else can sit on top of. But we need to be able to get in there and manually say, oh, not that one. Change that one. I like this guy except for that opinion, or oh, the AI fucked up on that one, I'm just changing that. You need to be able to do the manual override, and if you have manual override, you're talking about basic liquid democracy. So anyway, that's my my bit on AI.
Just a quick follow-up question. So politically and strategically thinking on this, again, my question is usually never around the invention itself and the idea itself, but it's on the presentation of it and how it will be perceived. Because some of us, going back to 2016 for reasons I don't want to get into, of course, but I started imagining like a DAO that would kind of subvert current governments so that we could get things done despite, whatever was happening above ground. There would be kind of like this collective intelligence happening laterally that we could all participate in. And so it would become irrelevant, whatever the politicians, were doing destructively. So when you're going around making these presentations, are you, is there a political angle here, or is it being perceived as, this is just something the citizens will do to keep them.
I'm not sure what you mean by presentations.
Well, right, because there's the invention itself, the technology itself, but then it's how it's conveyed to people. And
so you mean, how am I conveying this platform that we're building?
Yeah, so you're not conveying it as like a substitute for the United Nations.
No. Okay. I don't want to hijack this conversation away from its intended purpose, but I'll answer this really quick if I can. is that this is like a collaborative intelligence sense-making platform at its core, with incredible delegation and elections science machinery in it. Sorry. And so it's useful in anything, in a council or an association or a a business or a co-op or a student union or anything like that. And Jesus, my accountant is calling me. Sorry, I need to talk to him too. Hold on. Sorry, Mike, let me call you right back. I apologize. I'll call you right back. Just in another call. Okay, thanks. Okay, so now we're also opening up 7 layers where people can be invited to the world, their country, their state, their city or neighborhood, and also their biome and their watershed. So see if people start to make interesting connections there. But ultimately, this is a way of like decision making that can work in a wide variety of settings. And what we're hoping is that if, say, in a city or a small town or whatever, a large percentage of the people in that city or town or village start to use the platform, they could coordinate to elect somebody who would do the will of the people, as presented as presented on the platform. And then if that ever happens, then effectively we've taken over that jurisdiction, and then they can start to change the laws so that they can, require input from the people about decision making and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. So that would be the long-term goal. In the meantime, we have to create something that is visually appealing, that's intuitive to use, that has good outcomes associated with it, and that people can trust because we have using good technology and blah blah blah. So that's the roadmap.
All right, thanks, Sam. And okay, so there's 2 people who haven't gone yet. I'm not sure if Bernard or Nick, if either one of you guys want to do a presentation with the time that's remaining. I'm not sure how much time people have.
Yeah. I don't have one. I just wanted to listen and see what other people have today.
All right. Bernard, did you have anything to share here?
I don't have a presentation, just some loose thoughts. So I sort of hoped also to see Eric, especially given the
Eric Harris Brown.
Exactly, because of the grammatics thing. I know that this is something he's quite interested in, and he wanted to have a session on it, but then it somehow got lost.
Yeah, and in fact, so that was in the Hansi article about a lot of the core grammatic, the integral grammatology of Bruce Alderman. And I was telling Eric last year about that. I don't think at that time he was aware of Bruce's work. And I said, I was trying to actually set up a meeting to get further into that. But anyways, yeah, that's still something out there. I'd like to also hear where Eric is with that, if he's got any development on that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Maybe in the next session. I don't know. I'll hop in just to see if that happens. And other than that, I have been very much going away from the technology a little bit these last couple of months, more into the relational practices. And out of that has come an idea, which I don't know how long I'm going to pursue it. It is sort of generating games for identity shift. So facilitate inner work, doing inner work and relationship work by generating games, particularly for that purpose. And I know that in the Wico space, there are some interesting things to be tried with a glass bead game. But especially given Lee's presentation here, that is something that I find incredibly promising to be able to do cool stuff with that. Anyway, that's it.
Welcome, Johan.
Thank you.
So we actually started an hour ago, but thanks for joining. And actually, if you'd like, you can do a presentation or anything you want to do now that you're here.
Sure. Yeah.
Jim Rudd was just here. He actually left about 3 seconds before you joined.
Okay. Johan from Sweden, Lund. Collaborating a lot with Daniel and Emil. And working myself with meta theory. I'm part of the arc theory group. Soon to publish my first book chapter, and later on going to be a book. And my main thing I'm doing is having an IT company here in Sweden. So doing a lot of software development and partnering up with entrepreneurs who wants to have a entrepreneurial partner that handles the technology and so on for a startup or company. So that's basically what I do, or some of the things I do.
Sorry, can you just give me a quick idea of what you mean by an entrepreneurial partner? I mean, a tech partner for entrepreneurship.
We have, let's say you have a startup and you want to build something, whatever it is, and you don't have the technical skills enough to do it yourself. Then you could partner with us, and we either go in and take an equity share or a part of the revenue stream or whatever thing that makes it so that both of us are in the same boat. We're legally two different structures, but we are really invested, both of us, in the success of a project.
Sounds great. Yeah. I might have considered that. I just brought on a co-founder, so, but I'm just, who is technical. So but I'm just always curious about what people are doing. That's great. And it's amazing about the work with the Hansi duo. So that's cool. Curious to hear what you guys are doing, how you guys work together. Also, I'd be curious to hear about it. The kind of the meta, how people collaborate to create great works is like equally interesting sometimes to the great works themselves. So.
I can tell you a little bit. Well, Daniel has worked with me at my IT company, for example, and doing meta theory. So one of the things I do in the company is a long story why I do that. But what is coming is that Daniel is going to help me write part of my stuff. And the next Hansi book, Hansi is going to be interviewed by a fictional character. And then Hansi is going to interview me at the end of the book chapter, at the books, so to say, around meta theory. So that is going to be really, really fun, because then we are going to really introduce meta theory on a larger scale. Because Hansi is always using meta theory for his books and so on, but he never really explains how it works.
I gotta go, everybody. Good to meet. Good to hear y'all. Looking forward to next time. Good. Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So I'm not sure if anybody else has anything. I've also actually been a little bit involved with the Arch Disciplinary Research Center that Johan mentioned there a moment ago. And there is, I think there's somehow going to be a connection to technology. Maybe we're trying to raise funds for that. And it, so the integral grammatology of Bruce Alderman, which is mentioned in that Hansi article, could be used for some sort of a meta AI development that then in turn can allow for the enhancement of human collective intelligence, rather than this thing, these AI systems getting more and more intelligent and doing more stuff for us so that our intelligence atrophies. There might be a way that we can be mindful of core grammatical structures and leverage AI in certain ways that it enhances human collective intelligence. So I think that's what we're aiming to do. ARC might somehow be a part of that. I think we have some ideas, and I'm pretty sure we don't have the budget for very much of that. Do you have any updates on any of that, Johan?
No, I know that people are talking and exploring things, but we will see what happens.
All right. And I might be doing a salon for ARC. So there's already been a couple of them. Johan, are you going to do maybe a salon for ARC in the future?
No, I don't have anything planned. I need to get my things out before I start talking about them.
Well, it'd be cool, to do that. If you have your book coming out, you could just present on the book.
It's going to take some time for the book to be done.
Yeah.
A long time, sadly. But the
Yo,
book chapter is.
could you put a link to your center in the chat?
What's sent the Artdisciplinary Research Center, or that's ARC?
Yeah, the research center, or is that already in there?
ARC.voyage.
Okay.
Yeah, HTTPS ARC.voyage. There you go.
Okay, you got it for me.
Johan is an actual official member, and I'm just like in one of the working groups that they are looking at different integrative meta theories and how they might connect to each other. So one of the early steps is to pick two of them and just have working groups to compare and contrast across them. So they already had a series of meetings to explore the connections and interrelations and similarities and differences between integral theory of Ken Wilber and Greg Enrique's unified theory of knowledge.
Yeah,
But
because I would love
ARC
to.
is trying to like be like the highest level of meta above all of that, to look at universal patterns and connections across any integrated meta theories. Go ahead, Lee.
No, I was gonna say, I'm interested in some type of a follow-up discussion where we can talk about this precariat problem. You know, the idea of all these people who are doing work independent of academic institutions or business, but it's in this kind of liminal space that I've entered into, where people don't understand if what you're working on is philosophy, some type of academic research, or if it's an invention, or if it's a game or a business. And because you're not so neatly defined, the internet cannot sort us out, cannot give us an audience, and therefore it's very difficult to get funding. But it's elements of all of those things, and I would love to be a part of I introduced this once at a kind of a global discussion, and people even had a hard time wrapping their minds around this space, because I don't know how many people are in this, but I suspect that some of the people here might be, and it's hard for us to define our work.
And this is actually what Daniel and Emil told me when they said they wanted to start this collective.
Yeah,
there's a lot of us, actually, not a huge number, but there's dozens of us who are into metamodernism and meta theory and technology, and somehow trying to start businesses, and we're in the precariat, and we are having a hard time making a living. And so somehow there's a way in which we can make a living for ourselves by getting organized and talking about our projects and teaming up, somehow making meta teams. So that's the idea. And in fact, we should have follow-up meetings. That was where what we could do is actually have another working group for that, because this one is more like for hackers, but then there might be metamodern entrepreneurs who aren't really hackers, I guess, somehow.
Yeah, I like that. I actually got distracted when you described this idea initially. But now I'm listening to this the second time. I think it'll be good, because there's some collaborations you love and some collaborations you hate, and typically, people who are involved in metamodernism potentially are people who work on themselves to make themselves better. and those could be people that are easier to connect with and maybe but easier to work with, right? So it could be something in there. So I'd love to explore.
Yeah, it's also a problem, I should point out, of personality types. I did a presentation this summer on a metamodern business model. And there was no coagulation between the disparate parts in the meeting. There was business interests, philosophy, politics. I brought them together in one meeting where we tried to kind of solve this, like we should all be collaborating. And it was very disjointed. It was even hard to create this kind of common language that everyone could understand so that they could participate.
I remember you. I didn't participate. I didn't join that, but I remember you saying that Lena Rachel Anderson had said like she was getting into some history of like the Renaissance, and
Yeah.
and then you had an entrepreneur on there or a financier who wouldn't. He wouldn't. As soon as she gets into that, he just like
He says, "I'm out." He walked. I mean, he literally walked out of the Zoom meeting as she was getting into the modern history of Europe. He just said, "I can't be a part of this. I got to go." He just found it to be completely irrelevant, and I thought it was all relevant, but that it needed a connector. It needed something to bring all the parts together so that they could work on forming something, and it was very difficult, I think. But that was before Chat GPT. And now I think you could get some advice on what is a good common language strategy that appeals to everyone in this group.
All right, I think we might be wrapping it up in a moment here. We have another session that is going to be pretty late for some people, but it will be ideally timed, actually, or a pretty good time for a lot of people in Europe and East Asia and Australia. And that's for me, it's 11 p.m. Pacific time on Sunday night. So it's not too late. I'm kind of a night owl anyways. For Johan, it's going to be, I guess, morning and Monday. And for some people on the East Coast, it might be in the middle of the night. So sorry. All right. So does anybody else have anything to share? All right. So
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So I'm looking for a social media freelancer. I just need to improve. So I had a marketing manager who worked for us for a few months, and she's moving on to the other things. So I wanted to see if anybody knows anybody who does social media kind of management and content coordination, maybe even content creation a little bit.
I think that's what you used to do that. I don't know if you're too busy these days.
Well, I am busy, but again, to the problem of the precariat that I mentioned before, I'm always looking for projects to help sustain what I'm doing. So I do run an organization called glidercell.com. I do content management systems. I do some social media. I have one small account like over in Silicon Valley. It takes me about 5-10 minutes a day to do their content. So I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah.
Are you in California?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm sending you an email. So let's coordinate that way.
All right, that sounds good. You have my email on there?
Yeah, I think you texted me your email, and I think I already sent one.
Oh, yeah. And
Okay.
Brandon, are you going to be, is there a way to save this chat? I don't see.
Well, your co-host, you should be able to do that. Although, yeah, hold on a second. I can't save the chat either.
See you later, guys. Thank you. Good to meet you, and
Thank
good
you.
to see you. Johan again, and Lee, good to meet you, and Brandon always. All right, have a good
Meeting you,
one.
Nick and Johan.
Bye
Thanks
bye.
for listening.